Welcome everyone to the Lord of Mysteries novel summary series on Ani Monolith. Klein then patiently knocked on the door, but he waited for a long time and still didn't see any response. Then Klein decided not to hesitate and went straight inside to find the person he needed to meet. He then discovered there was a desk that looked like a reception desk and there was a girl with curly hair sitting there. So he immediately went straight to ask about the situation, but the girl pretended to be reading the newspaper and avoided Klein's presence. However, Klein still did not give up and decided to clearly state his purpose of coming to find Dunn Smith as previously promised. Hearing that name, the girl with shaggy hair muttered that Klein needed to find the captain, so she would be more polite towards him. However, this very pretty girl also told Klein that Dunn Smith was currently working at Cheney's Gate, so he needed to wait a while to meet her. While waiting, the girl did not forget to invite Klein to go to a suitable place for distinguished guests. While passing by rooms separated by walls, Klein accidentally discovered that the young policeman with the temperament of a poet was also present there. Coincidentally, the other person also saw Klein, so he quickly waved goodbye to him and continued to return to work. Klein was then led by the girl down a rather deep staircase, but fortunately, it was not too dark because every few meters there were glowing dark sacred emblems attached to the wall. These badges also gave Klein information that the organization he intended to join was currently under the management of the Church of the Evernight Goddess. While Klein carefully walked down the stairs, the girl suddenly reminded him to be careful not to fall. Because there are victims who have experienced this incident. That was the young man with a poetic temperament that Klein had just greeted. Turns out his name is Leonard and he's a Beyonder nicknamed Sleepless. After briefly introducing Leonard, the girl also introduced her information to Klein. It turns out her name is Roseanne, and she was the daughter of a Beyonder belonging to the Nighthawks but died on a mission when she was 17 years old. So Roseanne joined her father's organization to continue her deceased father's career, just to be protected. However, the girl also said she was not a Beyonder, and she hoped Klein would quickly become her colleague here. Then the two came to an intersection. Roseanne instructed Klein which direction to go to Cheney's Gate, and which direction to go to St. Selena. Upon hearing this information, Klein was a bit surprised because he did not expect that in the basement of this company, there was a secret path leading to the pilgrimage center of followers of the Church of the Evernight Goddess. Then when Roseanne led Klein to a giant iron door with 7 dark sacred emblems carved on it, she left Klein alone and left. Klein then knocked on the door and was invited in by Dunn Smith. Dunn Smith didn't say much but frankly asked if Klein had any intention of joining the organization. Of course, Klein replied that he wanted to join. So Dunn Smith quickly took out a contract, which he considered similar to a labor contract, and then gave it to Klein. Most of the terms inside have been mentioned by Dunn Smith before, but there is only one new thing that catches Klein's attention: if you violate the rules, you will be subject to trial by the Supreme Court of the Church of the Evernight Goddess, not the Court of the Kingdom of Lone. Klein then agreed to sign the contract, and Dunn Smith also quickly stamped his confirmation on the new member's contract. Meanwhile, Klein quickly discovered that the seal belonged to the Nighthawk team of Tingen City, Alwa District. To help Klein relieve his curiosity, as well as to help recruits learn some necessary information before starting a new job, Dunn Smith gave an overview of the company's teams. Blackthorn Security Company includes their name as well as the job and position they are assigned to. The unit that from now on Klein will be assigned to work is the 7th Unit, Special Operations Department, Alwa County Police, Lone Kingdom. The number 7 also shows that in addition to Klein's unit, there are other units. So Dunn Smith started to explain more information to Klein. The first 4 units are the regular police responsible for general security, like the VIP Protection Unit and Key Installations Protection Unit. From Unit 5 onwards are the ones dealing with supernatural incidents in each city. The unit that Klein will join is responsible for incidents related to the followers of the Evernight Goddess in Tingen. Then Dunn briefly introduced how to divide tasks in the organization Nighthawks. If there are different types of followers, then we divide the area accordingly. Besides that, we are mainly in charge of places like the North, West, and the Golden Indus region. Unit 6 of the mandated Punisher Squad under the Church of Storms is in charge of the Pier region, the East, and the South. The university area and the suburbs are under Unit 5, which is the Machinery Hive Mind Squad in Tingen. After listening to Dunn Smith, Klein asked how many Beyonders were on the Nighthawks team. Dunn Smith's answer made Klein feel that there was an arrangement of fate, because the Nighthawks team up to now had 6 Beyonders, and the civilian staff was originally 5 but now with Klein's participation, will become 6. A surprisingly balanced number. Then, Klein did not forget to voice his long-standing question, which is why some Beyonders lost control, what caused them to fall into such a state. However, Dunn Smith did not directly answer but instead avoided it by asking Klein about the myth of creation. Of course, with the original Klein's memory as someone who went to Sunday school, Klein can completely answer any issue related to the revelation of Evernight. The Creator awoke from chaos and shattered the darkness, creating the first ray of light. He then fused himself completely into the universe and made up all of existence. His body became the land and stars. One of his eyes became the sun, while the other became the crimson moon. Some of his blood rushed into the seas and rivers, nourishing and nurturing lives. While answering, Klein had to stop because he suddenly discovered that there were too many similarities between this myth and myths created by different peoples on Earth. Dunn Smith also quickly followed him to explain more about the greatness of the revelation by recounting in detail the parts of the Creator that transformed into countless races. His lungs turned into the elves, his heart turned into the giants, his liver turned into the Treants, his brain turned into the dragons, his kidneys turned into the feather serpents, his hair turned into the phoenixes, his ears turned into the demonic wolves, his mouth and teeth turned into the mutants, and his remaining bodily fluids turned into the sea monsters, of which the essence was Naga. His stomach, his small and large intestines, and the evil parts of his body turned into devils, evil spirits, and various kinds of unknown maleficent existences. His spirit became the eternal blazing sun, the Lord of the storms, and the God of knowledge and wisdom. His wisdom gave birth to humanity. That was the first epic, the Chaos Epic. Klein finished the last sentence for Dunn, but he found it funny and ridiculous. Faced with the extremely interesting information just mentioned by Dunn Smith, Klein could not contain his surprise. Because this creation myth is so detailed. As if someone had actually meticulously sat down and arranged all these ideas together to best suit their intentions. Then Klein also realized there was a strange point in the revelation of Evernight, which is why the gods are like eternal blazing sun, Lord of storms and God of knowledge and wisdom were from his creator's spirit. Meanwhile, the Evernight goddess had only awoken at the end of the second epic. After that, the goddess could start to join with the Lord of storms, eternal blazing sun. She blessed and helped humanity survive the cataclysm. It was also known as the third epic, the Cataclysm Epic. In the same epic, the god of combat and Earth Mother appeared too. But the god of steam and machinery did not appear until the fourth epic. Klein's question about the late appearance of these gods is completely reasonable, because gods like the goddess of Evernight, because they are not mentioned in the creation myth, have to suffer a low status. Superior in status to the gods created from the creator's own body. In response to Klein's interesting question, Dunn Smith asked him to read the full title goddess again. Luckily, the original Klein had a mother who was an ardent devotee of the goddess of Evernight, so reciting the title in full wasn't much of a challenge, but he still had to try to remember. The Evernight goddess stands higher than the cosmos and more eternal than eternity. The Lady of Crimson, the Mother of Concealment, the Empress of Misfortune and Horror, Mistress of Repose and Silence. What does the Lady of Crimson symbolize? Dunn asked with a guiding tone. The red moon. The moment Klein answered, he immediately understood. Then which part of the creator did the red moon come from? Asked Dunn with a smile. A single eye. Klein and Dunn smiled at each other. Finally, Klein was able to complete his answer that the Evernight goddess had only awakened at the end of the second epic. Together with the Lord of Storms, eternal blazing sun, and other gods, she blessed and helped humanity survive the cataclysm. It was also known as the third epic, the Cataclysm Epic. After being interpreted by Dunn Smith, Klein was extremely surprised to learn the truth that the goddess was born from the eyes of the creator. So this means that in terms of background value, the goddess is not inferior to other gods. Of course, the two churches of God of Combat and Earth Mother also have similar explanations about the god they worship. As for the god of Steam and Machinery, the worshippers have to suffer being outnumbered by other churches. Because they came from so late, they cannot relate to the myth of creation. The status of the God of Steam and Machinery Church has only changed dramatically since the arrival of the steam engine. It was from that moment that the God of Steam and Machinery took his place among the ranks of other ancient and noble deities. Dunn Smith mentioned these stories because he wanted to clarify why there was a Beyonder. That's because humans, after being created, constantly sought to absorb the outstanding abilities of other races. Then they prepared potions with formulas that could make them possess the characteristics of the races they desired. And those who possess the special abilities of other races are called Beyonders. However, the price to pay if you overdose on the potion or use the wrong formula will put the Beyonders into three dangerous situations. The first is spiritual death, the body collapses, and every piece of flesh and blood turns into a terrifying monster. The second is that the power of magic medicine changes your personality, becoming cold, sensitive, easily angered, cruel, and contemptuous of everything. Having said this, Dunsmith deliberately did not continue, making Klein both curious and nervous about the third outcome that the Beyonder would suffer. Then Dunsmith also returned to the unfinished topic. He said that the third consequence that the Beyonder could suffer was no longer being able to control his mind, falling into a state of hysteria, even cruelty. Scarier than the devil. The Beyonder falling into this state is commonly referred to as losing control. Without waiting for Klein to say a word, Dunn continued, after a long period of experimentation and exploration, together with the birth of the blasphemy slate, humans have finally perfected the potion system. We formed a tiered system that chains into stable progression paths known as sequences. The lower the number in a sequence, the higher the grade of a potion. At this point, the 7 major churches each control at least one complete sequence. Besides, there are also incomplete paths that they have gathered over the past hundreds or thousands of years. When he heard the name Blasphemy Slate, Klein immediately remembered that at the gathering, the Hanged Man had also mentioned it. The Hanged Man said that Blasphemy Slate is an important factor in helping the potion be formed and completed. Meaning that the information does not completely coincide with what Dunsmith just said. However, at that time, Dunsmith explained to Klein about Blasphemy Slate without knowing Klein's previous thoughts. It turns out that Blasphemy Slate is a product created by an evil god, and what use it has, Dunsmith still doesn't know. However, he did not forget to warn Klein that if he discovered it, he should immediately report it. Dunsmith then goes on to talk about the fourth type of loss of control. In other words, they are half a sequence 9 Beyonder and have fixed characteristics. Sequence 9 is the lowest grade in the chain. In short, they can only choose a corresponding, fixed sequence pathway. If they consume other potions, the effects might range from mental disorders to a loss of control, or even worse, death. This is the second type of loss control. The third kind is similar to the second kind. Once you choose a sequence chain, you will be forced to go down that path. There will be no room for regret. If you were to consume potions from the corresponding sequence of other paths, there would be a high probability you would get mixed, unusual, and warped powers. But it is almost certain that you would be in a semi-deranged state, sensitive and irascible, cruel and bloodthirsty, and silent and melancholic. The fourth is the most common problem. When we consume potions to gain powers that originally belonged to extraordinary beings, we undergo an unnatural transformation. Therefore, we would more or less be affected by the remnant spiritual powers. While perhaps the symptoms might not manifest and are undetectable to others, they will lurk in one's mind. If one rushes to consume the corresponding potion ranked higher in the sequence before fully grasping the extraordinary powers the potion brings and eliminating the subtle traces, the madness will accumulate, increasing the chances of losing control. The fifth kind is the most common reason for a loss of control. For Beyonders, one's spiritual perception would be enhanced more or less. The smaller the number in the sequence, the more enhanced their perception. Therefore, they would hear what others cannot hear, see what others cannot see, and encounter things others would not encounter. They are constantly met with mysterious enticement and illusionary bewitchment. Once they are overstimulated or have greedy desires, they will slowly go down the path of losing control. After explaining in detail the types of loss of control that the Beyonder could encounter, Dunsmith sadly revealed that members of the Nighthawks, even if a team member has made great contributions, they must still drink the potion for 3 years and then pass the corresponding test before they can be promoted. That being said, every year, quite a few people lose control. To talk about this both glorious and harsh position of the Beyonder, Dunsmith borrowed the words of Archbishop Cheney's, who was the founder of the Nighthawks, to describe we are guardians, but also a bunch of miserable wretches that are constantly fighting against threats and madness. Then Dunsmith concluded that becoming a Beyonder is not as great as many people think. However, Klein believes that everything in life has its price. If you gain something, you lose it. That's the normal rule of life. Although Klein is a bit afraid of the dangerous situations he may encounter when becoming a Beyonder, he still believes that with careful planning, many dangers will be avoided. For example, Klein can learn from previous Beyonders so that the leveling process will not be a problem. And when leveling up, absolutely do not overdose on potions or use path in a disorderly way, but must follow its correct route. At the same time, Klein also believes that the upcoming gatherings will help him gain more knowledge and information about potions, thus making it easier for him to level up. However, Klein does not aim to be promoted, because if he just stays at a low position, he can avoid the dangers that lurk. Because Klein was still deeply impressed by the strange sound that appeared when he performed the fortune-changing ritual. So he didn't want to confront such mysterious supernatural forces. He just wanted to find a way to return to Earth. Then Klein heard Dunn Smith talk about the abilities of low-level Beyonders not being completely strong, because they cannot fight against opponents who use weapons such as guns and artillery. However, as Beyonders, they still have expertise in certain special areas. So Dunn Smith hopes Klein will also find the right path to become a Beyonder in advance. Dunn Smith then pointed towards the Cheney's gate and told Klein about the members holding positions in the Blackthorn Security Company. That's an accountant and someone else who is in charge of procuring necessities and collecting supplies handed out by the church and the police department while standing in as a carriage driver. They are professionals and do not need to take shifts, so they can rest on weekends. The other 3 civilian staff are Roseanne, Brett, and Old Neil. Their jobs include attending to visitors, cleaning the rooms, and writing case files and inventory registration lists. They also guard the armory, storeroom, and archives, strictly enforcing the registration should someone wish to enter, take out, or return an item. Each of them has 1 day off a week, other than Sundays. They negotiate among themselves on the arrangement of night shifts and rest days. Upon hearing this, Klein speculated that his work was similar to that of Roseanne's group. However, Dunn Smith denied this and explained that Klein was considered a professional employee similar to experts. So the job that Klein needs to do is to spend time every day going from home to Welch's residence to see if he can discover anything about the case. Hearing that, Klein was extremely confused because he was convinced that he had passed the test. However, Dunn Smith quickly explained that the plan was to test Klein's reaction to things he had forgotten. As for Klein's memory loss, Daly has already finished testing. However, this does not mean that before losing his memory, Klein had done any suspicious actions related to the murders of Welch and Naya. Therefore, it is very likely that Klein had the Antigonus notebook after leaving the scene of Welch's residence. Because at the moment Welch and Naya died, Klein was the #1 suspect. When Dunn Smith said this, Klein also felt in agreement with this very logical guess. Because Klein himself did not know what the original Klein had done in the previous days. So following Nighthawk's request may help old memories return and thus help find clues related to the notebook. After that, Dunn Smith did not forget to remind Klein to take the time to come to the company to read historical documents as well as notes on many things. Because of Klein's historical expertise, what can be discovered from those documents? And if he contributes to the case being quickly resolved, Klein can be promoted to become a Beyonder. Then Dunn Smith did not forget to explain and remind Klein about how to use the underground gates at the company. There is one under the central cathedral of every major city. It is guarded by formal Nighthawk members on rotation. Inside, there are at least 2 keepers who are sent by the church, as well as countless traps. Dunn warned that Klein must not approach it under any circumstances, otherwise, he would befall misfortune. The area inside is divided into a few zones. Stored within are certain potion formulas for certain sequences and other magical materials. It is also used to temporarily hold heretics, mutants, cultists, and members of secret organizations. And they will eventually be sent to the Holy Cathedral. At the same time, Dunn Smith also talked about the danger of the items currently sealed in the deepest level of the Cheney's gate. These are objects with extraordinary abilities that not every Beyonder is strong enough to handle. Some of them even have the characteristic of living as if they were a living organism. More seriously, those items can lure keepers to escape captivity, which will cause a lot of chaos. And Dunn Smith also explained in detail to Klein that these sealed items were divided into levels with the level of danger becoming higher as the level number decreased. For example, level 2 will have a high level of danger, while level 1 will have a very high level of danger. Then Dunn Smith told Klein some shocking information, which was that a mysterious level 0 item was stolen by a former archbishop 3 years ago. Of course, Klein was extremely surprised and alarmed by this information. Dunn Smith then gave Klein a photo of suspect in Sangwil. What impressed Klein most about him were his blind eyes. And information about stolen items is extremely sketchy. However, Dunn Smith said that it was a way to organize information security of high-level mysterious items. But Dunn Smith also revealed to Klein that the level 0 item called 0-08 is a feather pen with an extremely ordinary appearance. However, it is capable of writing without having to use ink. Dunn Smith then finished his presentation and urged Klein to go to the armory to find Old Neil to gather more information. Because Old Neil used to be a Beyonder, but due to not being promoted for too long, as well as his health decreasing due to age, he was transferred to the position of armory manager.